Good morning and welcome to In Bad Form. My name is Mark Levitt, and what I've decided to do with these podcasts is that I'm going to take this opportunity to go over what I discussed in the group discussion every other week. So basically, one week I'll have the group discussion that anybody could participate in. And then the following week, I'm just going to do this myself, a podcast where I could go over material that I feel like I left out, or I feel like I missed an opportunity to expand upon, or, I just missed an opportunity to go deeper into. So this week, I have a few issues, and I'm going to save the good one for last, just because it's going to take so long. But the first thing I thought of was I said something to the effect of that I saw that our lives, or at least my life, I saw the end of my life, is what I said. And when I returned from that experience, the thing that I wrote down was that nothing matters, and the feeling was that I had was that we're already there. We're already at the end. And so it doesn't matter. And after that, I reflected more on how I could have said that better. And so that's why I'm going to go back to the picture from my book where I showed that all we are is an individual string of awareness. That if you could imagine awareness just as a string, what the nature of this an aware string is to fold up upon itself. And then when the folded string folds upon itself, there appears to be an individual among other individuals. And what I said was I experienced the end. And I think what people interpreted from that was that I saw, I don't know, maybe when I was 90 years old or, tomorrow, who knows, but the end of my life like that. And I was at the end. But that's not what I meant. What I meant was I experienced this. This is before your life, and this is after your life. This is what you really are. All you really are is an aware string. But because you're folded up, you experience a three-dimensional hologram screen that is you, but appears to be something else. All right. So... yes. All right. So what I was saying is I experienced reaching the end. So what I saw the end of my life. It's just the string. Because all that happens in the end is just the string comes undone. And then you are right back to where you started from. However, richer from the experience. And that's the change. So anyway, we could use that picture or we could use this picture too of being at the end. It's really the same thing. That's the end. This is the end. This is the unborn, the potential from which you spring from. And that's what this is too. This is the unborn potential from which you spring from. And basically the experience that I had was when I saw that I was already at the end simultaneously while I'm experiencing this, I just realized nothing matters. So anyway, I just thought that was a good way to clarify what I was saying in that last group discussion. And another issue that I had, or another thought that I had about how I could have said something better, was we were talking about karma. I think we were talking about karma and reincarnation. And I don't remember exactly, but whether I believed in karma and reincarnation or what I thought about karma and reincarnation. And yes, absolutely, karma and reincarnation, I exist. Like I said, it's just action. But and same thing with free will, same thing with choice, anything like that. That exists, but exists here in appearances. It appears to exist, just like, your chair exists, appears to exist. I appear to exist. You appear to exist. So yes, it does appear to exist, but ultimately, no. So anything that you can speak of, it could appear to appear. We could talk about it. You could describe it, being, I am, action, anything, it does appear. So it's as real as anything else that you know. But ultimately, it's void. All right. And which brings me to The third one, which is, and I kind of glazed over this one. Somebody was asking about why I surrendered to the mystery versus manifesting something myself. And I've spoken about this before, but I want to answer it, but I want to speak about this answering that question. So, the way I see this world is that, as I said, all there is awareness, and awareness is taking itself to be an individual experiencing others. So, this aware space is projected here, but in the form of an I in the world. And the I in the world appear in appearances. The seemingly limited world results in a sense of scarcity of aware space in the form of territory and resources or life to eat. And what I mean by that is all there is aware space. So an aware space bends in on itself. It creates the appearance of the world and you. Um, and the dynamic is that there's because everything is unlimited, because everything is unlimited, because everything is unobstructed, because everything is limitless. The mirrored effect, the inverted perception of that would be that aware space is scarce, that there's a limit. In the form, so space in the form of space would be territory. Think about the two biggest things that we fight over, whether it be countries or people, it's territory or resources, food, life to eat. So basically all there is aware space, and yet we're all fighting over scarcity of awareness and space. And when I say awareness, that's life. So awareness could be attention. Everybody's just fighting for attention. Pay attention, pay attention. I need attention, attention. Or life in the sense of food. Life in the sense of resources. Everything that we need as resources is life, whether it be trees, dirt, rocks, people, animals. This is life. And yet we there's a food shortage. There's a life shortage. There's a space shortage. There's all these different scarcities, or a mirrored effect of the unboundless aware space. So, the reason I said all that is because I look at this world as like a virtual reality set up like war games. I've described this before, to where what we're experiencing is, like I said, a simulation where it seems like there's a scarcity of territory and life, and now you got to survive. And everybody, including me, you, a leaf, a blade of grass, a star, a planet, everything is an example of a one variation, one permutation of an attempt to see the best way to survive in this scarce world of territory, scarce space, scarce territory, scarce life, scarce resources. So that's the situation we find ourselves in, where it's like every permutation is thinking it's got the best way, and then it's trying to tell you the best way. I got the best way. Do this. This is the best way. And everything is informing the other one of what the best way to do it. The sun, the leaf, you, the me, everybody is just one example of what's the best way to survive. What's the best way to do this? And like with war games, we know at the end of the movie of War Games that all those infinite permutations, simulations, all those attempts, any possible movement, any possible attempt in the game is wrong. It's failed. The only way to beat the game is to just not play at all. And that's why I choose surrendering to the mystery versus trying to manifest. Because you could do manifest. I believe in all that, or whatever, it appears to be true, but it doesn't interest me because that's not surrendering. That's just manifesting. That's just changing. That's trying to modify things. So yes, so I would have no interest in practicing manifestation, because surrendering is more appealing, and it's the only way. The manifesting, I mean, put it this way, all you're doing is manifesting it all day long anyway. You're just trying things, attempting things, transforming things, changing things, and none of it's working. None of it is ever going to work. The only thing that's ever going to work is to be, as I said, as hopeless as Buddha under the tree or helpless as Jesus on the cross. That's the only way. Helpless and hopeless surrender. All right. So now we get to the good stuff. So the last thing that I regretted not getting into deeper was the topic of relationships. I really regret not getting deeper into that because it wasn't soon after that I finished that group talk that I realized that relationship is literally the key to everything. And it's just strange because that's when we're talking about the Trikaya, that's all we're talking about is relationship. It's all I'm talking about is the relationship between the Dharmakaya, the Sambhogakaya, and the Nirmanakaya, or the essence, the nature, and the energy that manifests. But the reason I came to that epiphany was not actually specifically about the Trikaya. It was just because I had another experience where I recognized that relationship determines our experience. Relationship determines your experience of everything based on your perception of relationship. And what I mean by that is this box that I'm getting into later. The relationship is that this is what you are to everything else. To the people, to the thoughts, to the concepts, to the feeling of I am. The relationship is that this is what you are to everything. Anything that could possibly exist, anything that could possibly appear, this is the relationship. You encompass it. You're the space for it. Anything that appears in here is movement. Thoughts, people, things. And the relationship is that you encompass it. So relationship is everything. Another way that we could see that relationship is everything is that from the ground level, even before appearances, even before we could speak of the world, the original relationship is the inseparability between the empty essence and luminous nature. The inseparability of empty essence and luminous nature. And what I mean by that is best depicted with the leaf picture. So if we look at the leaf as all there is, as awareness, as the Dharmakaya, this is just space. Just pure space, inactive space. All there is the inseparability of this emptiness and clarity or luminosity, whichever way you want to look at it. But the important part is that represents the active part. So what you'd have is you have the inseparability of what it is, just space, and its active part, which is, let's just folding, let's just moving. So that folding. So the inseparability of what it is, space, and what it does, it bends, is necessarily going to manifest as duality, as the third thing. So I wanted to, and what we didn't get to was in my book was on page 30, was specifically talking about the shaping. The specific relationship between the trianistic relationship of what it is, what it does, and what it emerges as. So I'm just going to go back and read that real quick. The is refers to the subject's mere presence. The fact of the subject's existence is the isness that I'm pointing to. To simply be is enough to process the quality of isness. Depending upon the particular subject, the isness can even be as subtle or elusive as unactualized potential. The do refers to the specific process of the base. The base always performs an action or follows a path. The doing of the base is what transforms the base into the fruit. This is the active side of the infinite. The as refers to the base transformed into the fruit. The base is still there as a base, but the base manifests as the fruit. The as is what resolves the paradoxical relationship between mind and matter, or supreme source and its creation. Actually, the as emasculates the concept of creation altogether, since it becomes evident that nothing is ever created, but rather transformed from its base. Okay, so I want to show that visually. The relationship between the is, the as, and the does. Yes, exactly. All right. So the best way, and by the way, the original, or one of the original ways I came up with this was just thinking about the dance of Shiva. It's already there for us. So all there is Shiva, and what does Shiva do? Dances, and then the dance is the world. What we see of the world is really just Shiva, but dancing. I assume that's what they're talking about. But the way I experienced it was something that I use as a metaphor as an aware blanket. So if you were to just imagine if there was just an infinite blanket, a blank infinite blanket, undifferentiated awareness, represented by a flat blanket. But the nature of that blanket is to be attracted to itself. And when it does, it creates the folds, and it creates the curves, and it creates the movement, or you could say it creates the vibration. So the blanket itself would vibrate, it would move. So basically, if the blanket is what it is, vibration is what it does, and the as is the blanket appearing as our houses and our cars and the chickens and the molecules and space and time and our universe. So basically, everything that you're seeing is the one blanket just bending and stretching and moving and being shaped in such a way to create the appearance of everything that you're seeing. So you have what it is, the blanket, what it does, it vibrates, and the result is now the blanket appears as the house, the cars, the chickens, whatever it manifests as, whatever it's vibrating as, whatever the movement is, which brings us back to the relationship again. And this is something I've been really having fun with thinking about since I got on my mind again. So basically, what I noticed of the trend is that you have the inseparability of, let's say, aware space, since that's the word that I use. So you have the inseparability of inactive and active. And the relationship that I found is that one is guiding and the other one is taking action. So the inactive is actually the one that's guiding. The inactive aspect is the guiding aspect. And the movement is the active aspect. Or I call that passive yet guiding. Oh, okay. So the example that I came up with would be a riverbank. The best way to start to explain this. So there's three components of what we call a river. The inseparability of these three components is a river. So we have the bank, and then we have the water, And then we have the inseparability of the bank and the water as the river. So before we start with the river, we want to go into the pre-river. That's really how we have to enter this. That's how deep we have to go back into this. Because remember, the Sambhogakaya and the Nirmanakaya, this is prior to, I'm sorry, the Dharmakaya and the Sambhogakaya, this is prior to the world even appearing. So that's the world I'm trying to take you back to. So basically what we have is we just have the ground, just the earth. But the ground has basic shape to it. That's its essence. So the essence of the ground is its basic shape. All right? So now picture when the rain happens on this ground, based on the shape of the ground, water is going to gather. It's going to funnel. It's going to clump. It's going to gather together where there's a slight imprint, right? Just a slight imprint where you're gonna, like, you may look at the ground and think it's all flat, but only when it rains do you see, oh, it's not flat. Actually, I could see where the water's converging. A very slight invagination, very slight bend, a very slight fold, a very slight warp. All right, so that's what I'm gonna refer to as the blueprint. So the ground, the essence of the ground, depending upon the essence of the ground, that's going to be the blueprint for where the river is to be formed in the future. The way it's formed is because the essence, the nature, I don't want to even say nature, let's just say the essence of the ground is going to determine where the river is going to be. So now just picture a place where there's a groove, a natural groove, and then water is going to form there. And then the more water, it's going to, now it's going to get shaped by the groove that the water created. So this is what I mean by there's an inseparable relationship that I'm trying to communicate here, where the ground itself, the essence of it is going to be where the water is attracted to because of the grooves. And then those grooves are going to inform the water how to act upon the land by following the grooves. And then that water is going to shape those grooves and exaggerate those grooves and make them deeper and deeper. So when the next water comes, it's going to definitely follow that groove and make that groove even more deeper. And so now you have this simultaneous thing where the earth is guiding the water, and then the water is acting upon the riverbank to inform it more. So you get this circular thing that we come back to all the time in non-duality or, truth-seeking, which is three symbols that I could think of. One, the snake eating itself, consuming itself. Two, this is something I just drew roughly. This is Kali, the god Kali. I believe it's Kali. It's the Hindu god where basically with one hand, the god is taking the baby out, and then with the other hand, she's consuming the baby. And so there's this cycle constantly where you're taking life and then you're giving life. Taking life, giving life. And then so anyway, I've always resonated with that picture of Kali because it's just one thing, taking and consuming itself. Same thing with the yin yang. It's kind of like the self penetrating itself. The universal masturbation of the one, penetrating itself. So that's the relationship between the Sambhogakaya, the inactive aspect, and the active aspect. Is one aspect is guiding and one aspect is acting, and it's simultaneous. And that's why I try to give the example of the riverbank, creating the water. They're both taking part, participating. It's a symbiotic relationship is what I'm trying to say. All right. And I have a couple examples of that I want to, that I wrote down. One was our dog, Kaya. Anyone that knows me knows I have pugs, and we had four pugs, and I noticed that they were all leading in their own way. And I'll try to remember this because I haven't told this story in a long time, but what I used to tell people is that all of my pugs are leading in their own way. Bodhi, the black one, the leader, he was leading by being the first one. So he was always going ahead. Jerry was always right with me. And quite frankly, I really don't remember how I was saying he was leading, but we'll skip that because that's not important. What is important is Kaya, the very last one. I actually called her the leader. She was leading from behind. So if you were to look at it on a map or on a picture, a bird's eye view, it would look like the black dog Bodie was leading because he was ahead. And we're all walking in a line. We're all going to the same place, but he's ahead. He's trailblazing. So it looks like he's leading. But in reality, he keeps looking back at us because he doesn't want to be any more than, let's say, 20 yards ahead of me. He wants to be in a pack, but he wants also to push the pack and push it ahead. So he in one way, like I say, you could see him being the leader because he's leading the pack and he's pushing it. But if you watch the whole dynamic, he's always looking back at us because he doesn't want to be more than 20 yards away from the pack. He's never going to stray more than 20 yards away from the pack. And that's why I say Kaya was actually leading from the back, from being passive. By her not even trying, just by the essence of what she is, which is being slow and staying in the back and sniffing around and being super curious about everything, she was actually leading because we're not going to move until she moves. Because I'm in the middle, I'm watching her, I'm watching the leader, and so I'm walking. So basically, just like where Bodie doesn't want to be 20 yards and more than 20 yards in front of me, I don't want to be more than, let's say, 20 feet in front of Kaya. So if I'm walking and all of a sudden I find myself 20 feet in front of her in the back, I stop. And then Bodie stops in the front because he's not going to go more than 20 yards. So just by her inactivity, just by the essence of what she is, she's actually the leader. She's leading where we're going because the reality of the situation is we're not moving anywhere until Kaya moves. And that's going to determine when I move, and that's going to determine when Bodie moves. When the whole train moves, determines upon the essence of the inactive. So that's one example. And then also, I was thinking about how one acts upon another, how they're both happening simultaneously, and they're acting upon another. Reminded me of the problem they're having in quantum physics with the observer effect, that all of a sudden it's influenced. The very act of it is influencing the thing that they're observing. So there's this relationship between the guiding and the active, and they're both happening simultaneously. All right, so I want to get into that. So think about the guiding part as like the blueprint, the potential. One thing that I wrote down is the way that the inactive guides the active is via the essence of the inactive influences or affects the actions of the active. It's very important. That's how it does it. So it's passive yet guiding. All right. So now I think I'm ready to get to the main show. Yes. All right. So now we're going to put that on a board, and I'm going to show you the importance of relationship. I'm going to show you the importance of relationship between the inactive, the active in the world, and also the relationship between the world and the original tension that mirrored it in the first place. So here we go. We're going to go to my board, and I'm going to show you a diagram of the relationship between the inactive, the active, and the world that we experience. Okay, oops, here we are. So, all right. So we're going to start with the very beginning. Like I said, even before the world, even before we could speak of anything, even before we could speak of appearances, even before we could speak of manifestation. Originally, the original tension is that the active part, which is in the tree kaya, would be called the Samboka kaya. The Samboka kaya warps the Dharmakaya. And what I mean by that is the fold is that The Sambhogakaya, the active part folds the Dharmakaya, which is the void, giving us the result of the world. So we start with the Sambhogakaya. That is the active part. So the active Sambhogakaya warps the inactive Dharmakaya. Simultaneously, while that's going on, the Dharmakaya is guiding the Sambhogakaya how to move to warp it back. And that's when we go back to the whole thing of Kali, how they're both simultaneously doing the both thing at the same time. So it's a simultaneous, and that's why it's so difficult to talk about. And that's probably why no one talks about this stuff, is it's impossible because it's two things happening simultaneously. So basically, at the same time, the active Sambhogakaya is warping or bending the Dharmakaya, which folds it. Simultaneously, the Dharmakaya is guiding that Sambhogakaya, the active part, how to move and warp it, resulting in the Nirmanakaya. And then the Nirmanakaya is now when you can finally start to talk about the world. Now you can talk about the world, and the world that results from the inseparability of the aware space is another triune. And the triune that, and by the way, I didn't name it a triune. That's what scientists do. They call it space-time matter. So now the world that we call Nirmanakaya, they just call space-time matter. Yet another triune, and it mirrors that. And so now when we come down to space-time and matter, I'm going to show you how it mirrors the exact same dynamic of that which created it. So the world that appears out of the inseparability of the active and inactive happens to be another triune that scientists, physicists call space-time matter, a continuum. And this is what they say. This is straight from a physics book. You can go right to Google and confirm all this yourself. This is what physicists will tell you. If you just Google the relationship between space, time, and matter, this is what they're going to tell you. Space and time guides matter to warp space and time. And now here's the difference between me and science. This is the difference between me and science. They say and. Like there's a step. Oh, actually, they do say there's a step, because they say and matter acts back on space and time by warping it. So the difference is what I'm talking about, there is no and. They're simultaneous, and that's why it's difficult. But the way scientists describe it as far as space and time, they say that space-time guides matter to warp space and time, and then matter acts back on space and time by warping it, resulting in gravity. And what is gravity? An attractive force, which takes you right back to the beginning. So anyway, the reason I have this up there is I want to show you it's identical to the same dynamic. You could say the same thing. Space and time guides matter, how to warp space and time. Also, the inactive Dharmakaya is guiding the Sambhogakaya how to move the Dharmakaya, or how to bend it. And then matter then acts back on space and time by warping it, resulting in gravity. Same dynamic up here. The Sambhogakaya warps the Dharmakaya, resulting in the space, time, and matter. Boom, which brings us to that in the beginning. So that's the importance of relationships. And right down here, I have down, this is what actually the relationships are. The reason this is because you have the inseparability of aware space, or you could say you have the inseparability of clarity and emptiness, or the inseparability of luminous essence. And all of these inseparabilities, they're just really one inseparability, different ways of talking about the original inseparability, result in the fruit, result in the energy. So, yeah, that's it. That's it. And I won't get deeper into that because we will get into the triune in the next talk. But that is the importance of relationships. One guides and one moves. And that's all there is. Guidance and movement simultaneously. Guidance and movement. So anyway, yeah, I hope you watch this before the next talk so you could ask questions about it. But yeah, this has been fun. I'll do this every time. Every time I have a group discussion afterwards, I'll sit down and talk about it. Sit down and, think about things that we missed, think about things I could elaborate on. And then when you watch this, you just keep it going. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me of In Bad Form. And see you next time. And join us for the group discussions every other Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you and bye-bye.